And I have an aunt who thinks she's a lighthouse. This is Rebooty and the Beast, a podcast in 2 parts. I'm Ann Burke.
And I'm Matt Molinaro. And in the first episode, we review an original piece of media. And in the subsequent episode, we discuss the reboot.
That's right. And we're on an original piece of media today. We are covering Bewitched, the original Bewitched TV show.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
I forgot to write down what year it premiered. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it was 1964 and it lasted through 1972.
Whoa, okay. For some reason I thought it was more in the 70s than the 60s, but that's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I think we've talked about before how like both of us were big Bewitched fans as kids.
Oh my gosh, I loved Bewitched. Every summer, Nick at Night would do Block Party Summer, and they would
oh my god,
Bewitched be Wednesdays, and I would. That was one of my favorite days of the week. I was obsessed with Bewitched for a million reasons because I loved that era of television. I just grew up like glued to Nick at Night and TV Land and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
just obsessed. And you add an element of magic to it. A magical girl at that, forget it.
You're sold.
Goodbye, done, deal, you got me, signed, sealed, delivered. And the millions of memories that this brought back, I can't even tell you.
It's so funny that you mentioned, well, I of course also watched this on Nick at Night because we were both too young to have watched the original broadcasts. Mm-hmm. But it's so funny because the minute I started watching it, I was like, I feel like I kind of had like I'd watch Nick at Night and it would be like I Love Lucy and, I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and all of those. And then suddenly I had a memory of, I feel like there was also something called Block Party Summer. And then of course you're like, Block Party Summer, Bewitched be Wednesdays. I was like, wow, that is a level of memory that had escaped me, but impressive.
My encyclopedic knowledge of this type of stuff is unmatched. Not only did I remember that, but after we watched this, I was like, Davey, do you remember on Nick at Night, they used to have those, commercials that were for the TV shows, basically just for Nick at Night, little bumpers and things like that?
Yeah.
They made a parody song for Bewitched that was like to the theme song of Bewitched.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember a lot of the lyrics from it, but I cannot find it on the internet. I've been looking, and the thing that is making me frustrated is, listen to this. I got as far as finding the I Dream of Jeannie parody song from Nick at Night.
Okay.
The Bob Newhart one.
Oh my god.
The Dick Van Dyke one, but not the Bewitched one.
That's so frustrating.
It's making me so mad, but I remember the theme song said something like, it started with Bewitched, Bewitched, the theme song to Bewitched.
Bewitched, yes.
Oh, and I remember the ending part was the theme song plays, the cartoon goes, and Sam wiggles her nose. La 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 la. That's how it goes.
Oh, that's so meta. I love that.
So that's where my mind goes. So speaking of which, here's a piece of trivia while we're talking about it, because there was so much trivia about this. Did you know the theme song, the actual theme song to Bewitched, actually does have lyrics?
I do know that, yes.
I did not know that until this, deep dive.
Well,
and
yeah,
I listened
same.
to it.
Oh, did you?
I did. I listened to, it's been recorded by a bunch of people because it's one of those like American songbook songs that was just, hustled around. And I think Peggy Lee is the version I listened to.
Yes, yeah.
And it was cute. It was nice. It has that whole like sweeping old, it's a little slower in tempo.
Yeah.
But I think they made the right choice to not have the lyrics, to be honest. It doesn't have, it's not as punchy at all.
I also saw that for a minute they were considering using Bewitched, Bothered, Bewildered as the theme song, which is, a great song, a classic, but I do feel like wouldn't necessarily convey the same level of, like, there's a bit of a zaniness or a irreverence to the theme song that I feel like neither of those would have worked as well.
Agreed. There's a punchy sort of like bim bam boom. There's a little bit of razzle dazzle to it, you know.
There is some razzle dazzle. You're absolutely right.
Oh my gosh!
All
So
right,
we
started with the first episode.
Exactly. We started with the very premiere, which was hard to pick one to start with because there's a lot of highly rated ones in the early seasons.
Yeah. It does seem fair to start with the first one, though.
I agree. And honestly, on many lists, if you just Google really quickly, like iconic or favorite Bewitched episodes or best ones of all time, or even TV episodes, the first episode of Bewitched does appear on many of them. So I think it's fitting.
When I was Googling things about Bewitched, I did see, like, one of the suggestions was, like, which is the problematic episode of Bewitched? And I didn't look at it, but there was a photo that appeared to be, like, two babies in, like, differently racialized makeup. And I was like, oh, God.
Oh,
I don't need to go any further.
I do know about this episode. It is controversial. I did look up some information about it. Listen, I got really into this one.
Okay.
And it is controversially both, like, still considered, like, progressive by some communities and considered, you know, problematic, but maybe for its time progressive in others. It was an episode later on in the season about, I think, Tabitha, maybe her daughter or someone else that switches with another kid and the kid is of a different race. And then they find out how they're treated differently and it's supposed to be like that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I don't know how it all works out, but it is very much what you're thinking. So
yeah.
And we've seen things of that time, I'm sure, both of you and I.
Yeah.
Even if just little clips on the internet where we're like, ooh, that didn't age well.
Yeah.
That's probably a regret.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's, like, just some general themes of Bewitched that I think don't age well, but we'll get there.
One more memory, and I'm sure you'll remember this too. Did you watch I Dream of Jeannie as well?
I did. I was never as big of a fan of it as Bewitched, but I definitely did watch I Dream of Jeannie, yes.
Yeah, I'm the same. I loved I Dream of Jeannie. I love Barbara Eden, and I thought that the guy in I Dream of Jeannie, the male lead, was so hot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did as a kid. I was like, oh my God, Daddy.
Now I have to look him up.
He was so... I can't picture his exact face in my mind, but I can picture his haircut and the general idea. And he was in a uniform a lot because he was a major. Major Nelson.
Yes.
So he was the hottie, I thought. I mean, I thought Dick York was too, to be honest, from Bewitched. But...
I agree.
Yeah, right? But I remember they did a thing on Nick at Night where they polled the audience. You can call in or vote somehow. It was before texting. And say who was the more powerful spellcaster, Genie or Bewitched. Genie or Samantha.
Okay.
And I remember as a kid, however you voted, I voted. I don't think it was a 900 number because my parents would have killed me on the phone bill. But I remember I voted for Samantha, and I think she might have won. If anyone out there remembers this and wants to write in or contact us on our social media, if you remember, I don't remember one way or the other, but I think I'm mixing it up because I believe Samantha won by a small margin, which I thought was fair. She should have won. But I also remember they rated the Munsters versus the Addams Family at one point.
Oh, yeah.
And the Munsters won by a margin that I thought was crazy, and I liked the Addams Family better, and I was very upset.
Yeah.
So I
never watched the Munsters. I watched a little bit of the Addams Family.
Yeah.
Addams Family. I would argue that Jeannie is more powerful than Samantha, other than the fact that she's limited to somebody wishing.
Yes, but at the same time, she has the bottle. Like, that is a limitation, too.
Okay, yeah, sure. But also, the inside of that bottle looked fucking amazing.
Oh my God, forget it. Anyway. Do you want the little summary for the overall show, Bewitched, from IMDb?
Sure. Yeah.
It's pretty basic. It says, a witch married to an ordinary man cannot resist using her magic powers to solve the problems her family faces.
Accurate.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Piece of fun trivia about this, the concept of Bewitched. I read that in the writer's room, like in the sort of rules of how to write the show, like the Bible for the show, I think they call it in the biz, according to whatever website it was on.
Yeah.
It says to not consider this a supernatural show, but consider it like a family sort of show, and to like think about their issue being he's married to someone who's really wealthy and he didn't know it until they got married. And she exposes it to him, and he is trying to live a more modest lifestyle. He doesn't want to depend on her family wealth. He wants to live within his means. So it's about conforming to not using the power of your much more powerful wife.
Well, that's like Charmed, where the original creator, Constance M. Burge, talked about how like the show wasn't really supposed to be about the magic. It was supposed to be about the relationship between these sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the other showrunners came in later in the series, and it became like so focused on like the magic to the detriment of like character and storyline.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so accurate. Like if they had followed that formula, I feel like, you know, character is what drives the show, not like a spell and, you know, special effects.
Right. And I think a lot of TV shows fall victim to that in even other ways, like when they're trying to, you know, highlight a certain community, for example, and it becomes less about the actual story. And and I think this show, sadly, I mean, I watched the show all the way through the Dick York years to the later Dick Sargent years.
Dick Sargent, yeah.
And I liked a lot of the Dick Sargent years episodes as well, but you can see, especially the last 2 seasons of this show, a very strong decline, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you're saying too. Like, it became completely about the zany magical like situations they can throw them into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, I don't know that I ever watched it from beginning to end. I mean, I know I've watched pretty much all that I could have, but I can't confidently say like I saw the entire progression.
Mm-hmm.
But I did read as I was researching for this episode that during the sort of like last season, especially, Elizabeth Montgomery was like really phoning in her performances, and they actually just like reused plot lines from previous episodes for the final season.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, speaking of the episodes, should we start talking about the episode?
Yes. So the cast, just to say real quick, is Elizabeth Montgomery, Samantha Stevens, Dick York in these episodes is Darren Stevens, and I just have to say one of my favorite people in the world, Agnes Moorehead as Endora, Samantha's mother.
Listen, as I was watching this, I was like, if I ever went on RuPaul's Drag Race, I would play her for Snatch Game.
That is genius.
Isn't it? She would be a perfect character, and of course Rue would recognize and love her.
That is genius. Oh my god. You just spoke you spoke that into the universe. That's going to happen now. It's going to happen.
Okay. All right, we'll see.
Anyway, so just wanted to mention them because I really love all of them, and as a kid, I watched and I idolized these people on TV as a kid. As a kid.
Yeah, and I especially also loved when Samantha would play her sister, Serena. Yeah, and people like didn't recognize her because she had a dark wig on.
Yes, or long hair sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes it was even blonde and just long, and she wore like a hippie outfit instead of a suburban housewife.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was hysterical.
Do you know the title of this first episode?
Yes, I do. I have it written down. I think it's called Which Witch is Which or something like that. But here, hold on. Give me 1 second.
I thought it had something to do with like marital vows.
Oh, I think you're right. It's not Which Witch is Which. Okay, so it's episode I, Darren, Take This Witch.
I, Darren, Take This Witch. Okay,
there
that makes more sense. All right. Well, when I first started watching this, I won't say where we procured the episode that we watched, but it was in color, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. I distinctly remember the show being black and white. And so at some point they must have like gone back and like colorized old episodes, right?
They must have, because I remember the first few seasons, I want to say the first at least 2 were in black and white.
Right.
And then I think they went back and colorized them. The version I found was colorized, and I was like, okay, I'm into it, because I do remember when they did colorize it.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't mad because it also kind of, the colors of a 1960s household. Just, need I say more?
No, you don't.
By the way,
yes,
they used this show on WandaVision as what's her name's house, Catherine Harkness or whatever her name is, Agatha.
Oh, they like actually used the house for
this
Bewitched?
Set. Yeah, this.
Oh
actual
my gosh!
house.
No kidding.
Yeah, I read it
amazing
on a few different websites, and I think it's gone now. I think in 2020. late 2023, it got torn down
Aw.
on Friday the 13th in October.
Oh my God.
How fun is that?
So witchy.
So witchy. But yeah, Agatha uses literally this set in WandaVision.
Amazing.
Obsessed.
That's incredible. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, we begin with a narrator, which I'm sure I've seen the pilot episode before, but I was like, oh, this is like obviously very different. And they kind of use it as like a device to like set up the plot line of the show, which is, once upon a time, there was a typical American boy who happened to bump into a typical red-blooded American girl, and they became good friends. Was that good? Did you like that?
I loved it. It's really the precursor to what we would later have as he was a boy, she was a girl.
She was a girl. Could I make it any more obvious?
Yes.
I did love the like immediate kind of like humor of they found interest in all the same activities: radio, television, trains, but like they're paying attention to none of those things because they're just making out.
Yes, I love that. I feel like kissing husband and wives on TV was kind of like probably the most taboo thing back then.
Well, there's a couple moments in this episode where I was like, oh wow, I'm surprised they got away with that. But
yeah. I think they shared a marital bed.
They shared a marital bed. There was heavily implied sex at multiple points. But I do have to say, like, there are moments where you can tell that, like, Elizabeth Montgomery and Dick York are, like, not into it because they're just, like, they just have their mouths pressed together and they are not moving.
Yeah. I do think they had a lot of chemistry as a couple, but I especially comedic timing too.
Yeah.
But I did read that they didn't have the best like off-screen relationship.
Oh yeah, that makes
most
sense.
people,
yeah.
other than Agnes Moorehead, didn't have the best off-screen relationship with Dick York. But it was, it was due to a lot of things in his life. We'll talk about later with trivia. But
yeah.
But I did read that that they did, especially in the early years, there was a lack of chemistry. So that doesn't surprise me that you noticed that.
Yeah. So it's their honeymoon night is like kind of where we begin the first episode.
Bridal suite.
Yeah, in a typical bridal suite. I lost my radio announcer voice. But she is in the most Little House on the Prairie Amish girl nightgown I could imagine.
Oh, 100%. It is the nightgown of this time period. It is basically a curtain.
It is, yes, with a little Peter Pan collar, basically.
A little frilly something at the top, too.
Yes.
This is, I remember this moment so clearly when it's like at the end of this little opening when they're like, but there's something about this typical little girl that this typical man didn't know. And then the brush, the very fancy brush floats over to the vanity and to her hand. And this little girl is actually a witch. Obsessed.
That brush was really pretty.
That brush, I mean, when I think of a vanity, I think of that vanity and that brush. That has been in every TV show and every movie from that time period.
And then we get the opening sequence and the theme music, which did you know was animated by the same people who did the Flintstones?
I didn't, but when I read that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's so Hanna-Barbera, so that, and it's so that iconic, those like shapes from the 60s that are just everywhere.
Yeah, and the colors.
The colors, her eyes are little swirls, that music, and even the little drawing of them are so cute.
I agree. And what I liked was, or that I learned rather, was that apparently back then, like part of the intro would be like a title card of who had sponsored the show. So like it would be like Bewitched, sponsored by Chevrolet. Oh. And that's one of the reasons why apparently in like the early seasons, especially a lot of the cars that you see are Chevrolets.
Oh, I did read that there was like a Chevrolet sort of tie-in.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So, Agnes Moorehead, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the title sequence. Or we come back, and the broadcaster... Let me see if I can get back into my broadcaster voice. Every girl needs love and romance. There's just one thing she doesn't need. And then, who pops in but Endora? And Samantha goes, mother. Can we just talk about how, for me, as much as I loved Bewitched, like, I think Endora was what I always tuned in for.
Oh, Mike, there is something about this character for, I think, young queer people.
Something, yeah.
It's the Mona on Who's the Boss?
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's this... someone who she knows something everyone else doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, she's kind of just, she's in control.
Yeah.
And it drives the other characters crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just something about this character.
She's unfiltered. Yeah.
Yes. And just everything you want. Says all the things that you can't.
Yeah.
I love her.
And I think her, obviously once the episodes become colorized and you see that she has bright red hair, blue Mimi from Drew Carey eyeshadow, or maybe I should say Mimi had Agnes Moorehead eyeshadow.
Endora, yeah.
And a like lilac dress with like a green shawl over it.
I think
it's
that's
like
kind. I think
the
lilac dress. It is like just yards of mauve and lime green fabric just draped on her in the most like mystical, magical sort of way.
But it's like they picked 4 colors that like none of them go with any of them.
Right.
It's kind of amazing.
Right. And you know what's sick? I read, like, and I remember this now, but she wore that through the entirety of the series.
Yes. And so apparently Samantha, while she was, her costume budget was the most because they wanted her to kind of like dress like chicly and of the times and wear some of the nicest fashion. And Dora just had to wear that fucking ugly dress in every single episode.
I was like, wow, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway. She pops in, and it's an iconic moment because, you know, both of us just gay gasped immediately, probably.
Yes, of course. And she doesn't want Samantha to be married to a normal man. So she's like, you're coming home, da-da-da. Oh, yeah, mortal. Yes. Meanwhile, so they're in the bridal suite, and Darren is in the, like, I guess,
bathroom
couch area. No, kind of like the living room area of the suite.
Oh, like the lounge.
Having a glass of champagne in his like silk floor-length robe,
oh my God.
Which is so like Hugh Hefner-esque to me.
The amount of modesty.
Oh my God.
He is wearing to bed, he'll wear this to bed too, a long silk robe over a full set of like pajamas that might as well be like he looks like he's wearing a suit, but a suit to bed, a bedtime suit.
Yes.
I was like, God.
Yeah, I would die.
Yeah.
So he's like, she teleports him, and Dora teleports him to the hotel lobby, which I thought was kind of a funny gag. But, you know, honestly, the amount of things, what I have seen people wearing in hotel lobbies, like, he would be well dressed by comparison. But it's just so funny that, like, back then, this is like, oh, so embarrassing that he's in the hotel lobby in his floor-length silk robe and pajama set.
Yes, I was like, where?
Honestly.
But I love that. I love that. Meanwhile, she's like talking to Samantha and being like, well, you're not going to be able to keep him around if he ever finds out that you're a witch. And she's like, well, I'm going to tell him. And she's like, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That takes care of that. He'll be gone tomorrow.
Yeah. But
I love that.
That like teleporting Darren downstairs thing gag happens a couple times, and he like when he thinks he's about to knock on the door to the bridal suite where Samantha is, she teleports him downstairs and he starts knocking on the head of the concierge man.
I thought that was so... And I laughed out loud at these moments.
Yes.
Like, I haven't laughed out loud at a sitcom in a long time.
Yeah. There are some very fun moments.
Yeah.
So, Endora vanishes, and Darren comes back up, and Samantha is like, let's sit down. Or he's like, he clearly makes like, all right, time to fuck eyes at her. And she's like, actually, let's sit down, and like kicks the bedroom door closed so that she can tell him about herself before they have sex.
Yes.
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like I'm surprised that a show was able to get away with, like, there are multiple instances just in this episode where they are like making implications that it's time to have sex. And I'm just kind of surprised that flew.
Yeah, I mean, it is 1964.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
thinking maybe they're getting away with it because they're implying that they're waiting till their marital night to have sex for the first time, and that they've just been
Yeah.
making out like, horny teenagers
Yeah.
until this final moment when she can finally have sex with him.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Still, though, I was also like, okay.
Yeah. So she says, I'm a witch. And he says, that's wonderful. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Because he wants to bone real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of insists. And this is where he has the line, honey, I have an aunt who thinks she's a lighthouse. Like, we don't have to worry about it. And then we get kind of her first displays of magic with him, where he like pulls out his lighter but can't get it to work, and so she lights it. And
I was like, wait, why is every witch thing we ever see the first display of their magic lighting a fire?
I mean,
Every
in
single time.
Charmed, she like puts cream in the coffee.
No. We see the lighting of the candles first, don't we?
Oh, I guess that's true. Yes.
It's like the easiest thing, I think. Easiest visual thing. Have her light a candle with our eyes.
Have her light a candle. Yeah. And then I will say, I think Bewitched has some really good physical comedy
Oh my gosh.
to it, because she like pulls the ashtray back and forth as he's trying to like, ash it, whatever, I guess. I don't know smoking words.
Yeah, she did a great job with her eyes too. Like, she really followed that ashtray around, and whoever was, controlling that from wherever.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I just thought it was great. And it went on the perfect amount of time. And he was like, all right, fine. And then he gets up and he's like, walks away, and he's like, I could really use a drink. And then it just appears in his hand.
Yes.
I would like that power.
Oof, man.
For anything.
So here's my theory. So he says, like, I'd love a drink. A drink appears in his hand. And he goes, an old fashioned. And it changes to an old fashioned. And then he says, with a straw. And a straw appears in the drink. Do you think that he just had to stay really, really still as like somebody quickly ducked in and out of frame to like swap out his drink and then plop a straw in it?
Absolutely.
That's the only thing I could think of.
100%. It
But
was well
that's
done.
what finally... totally. I mean, I couldn't pull it off.
A lot of the visual stuff I thought was like pretty well done, surprisingly.
Yeah. I know. I feel like I expected to see like more fishing line and stuff,
Yes,
and I didn't.
Exactly. Oh. Yes.
But this is what convinces him that she actually is a witch.
It would do it.
The minute that ashtray moved, I would have been convinced.
The ashtray move would have been enough for me, but making a drink appear in my hand isn't bad.
No. Also, I don't know. I would have... Okay. The whole premise of the show, right, is that he wants a normal wife and she should suppress her magical abilities for him, which I never liked that premise. And she resists it anyway, of course.
Right.
But if Miles suddenly told me that he had magical powers and could conjure a drink in my hand, I'd be like, this is the fucking best.
Yes. We would have been... Don't take advantage of it. I'd be like, are you kidding me? Why are you telling me now?
Right, exactly.
We could have been doing this all the whole time.
Right.
Let's
I'd be
get
like,
going.
Can you teleport us to Paris? Like, can we...
Oh my gosh.
Like, can you conjure some solid gold so that we can sell it and be rich? Like,
yeah,
what are you talking about?
Can you conjure me a phone to go call and quit my job?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, the most important thing is conforming to society, so you got it.
Yes, of course.
You got it.
So he's like, we've got to figure this out, and then goes, later. And then it's a high express train ticket to Bone Town.
That's right. Choo-choo.
And then we kind of get like a couple like montages of scenes where Darren is basically telling everybody in his life that his wife is a witch, like the doctor, the bartender, his best friend. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, sure, okay, yeah. You should, if you think your wife's a witch, you should meet mine. Like, nobody actually believes him. So I think it's kind of just like setting up the, like, he tried to tell people and nobody believed him. So now we're just allowed to continue on with the premise, basically, that nobody's going to know.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And then we go back to seeing their home, which is the first time we see their home. And I was just obsessed with everything. The sunken living room, the wood paneling, the greens, the olive greens, the yellows, the browns, everything.
I read that they often have a lot of green in the show, specifically because it's like associated with witches, and so Samantha is like often in green, or they sometimes have Darren in a green suit, so they use that color a lot more than any other color in the show.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, you could tell for sure.
Yeah. But he's come to the decision that he loves her and he can't give her up, which is sort of bleak to say, like, on day 2 of the marriage that you were considering that.
Right?
I was like, and she seems not at all like, I'm sorry, you were debating giving me up? What? Instead, she says, oh, thank you, darling, and like gives him a big hug. By the way, she is wearing what looks like the most cozy sweater.
Oh my God, I wrote down her sweater.
I'm obsessed. It's like this massively oversized turtleneck in kind of like a very soft, fuzzy looking material, maybe cashmere. I'm imagining cashmere.
Yes, I feel it. I felt it. She always dressed well, Samantha.
Yeah, definitely.
Always. That hair. She was just the epitome of just gorgeousness to me as a kid.
Yeah.
Just love her. Love Elizabeth Montgomery.
So he tells her, like, you have to promise not to use magic. You'll have to learn how to cook and clean house, like every normal wife. And she's like, soon we'll be a happy couple with no problems. And he's like, I could use a drink. And she says, I'll go make it. Really make it.
God.
Barf.
Barf.
And then he talks directly to the camera, which I think is the only time they do this in the series. But he says, so my wife's a witch. Every married man has to make adjustments. All right. And now we get him in his office, and in walks a woman named Sheila, who has the most phenomenal helmet of hair I can imagine. Like, it legitimately just looks like it is shellacked.
Oh, it is beyond. It's like a drag queen doing a Jackie O impression.
That is exactly perfect description. She's also got this amazing like shawl that's got like a billion pom-pom tassels hanging off of it. Her entire look in this is amazing to me. It would be kind of like the perfect executive realness category for Drag Race.
Right. Yes, exactly. I could see this being something dreamed up in some way in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Apparently, what I didn't realize is like she and Darren had like a thing before. And she kisses him and he's like, I'm married now. And she was like, well, of course, like, great. Like, if I hadn't left for Nassau when I did, it might have been me. So we basically learned that she and Darren used to be a thing, but she doesn't want to be married to him, is kind of what I took away from that.
Yeah, to me, it was like she wanted to be married to Darren, and he ended up in a It was unclear the timeline. Like, if I didn't go to Nassau, it could have been me. I was like, okay, well, what were you dating? Were you dating both of them casually, and you just decided to go
marry
with Samantha because she was gone longer? I don't really understand, but I'm choosing to presume that they were casually dating, and then she moved or went to Nassau or whatever, Nassau, and to the Coliseum, and he, I guess, got married, and now she's jealous because she wanted him for her own.
Well, she's got a scheme because she invites him and Samantha over to potluck tonight. And she's like, oh, it's so casual. We're all dying to meet her.
Nothing fancy. Sitting on the floor style.
Sitting on the floor kind of thing. You know, very cash.
Very cash.
And so they go over. And as they walk up, Samantha's like, it's some fancy looking place. Mm-hmm. And inside, everyone is in like evening gowns and tuxedos. So she clearly set Samantha up. Mm-hmm. And basically is super nasty to her the whole time that Samantha's in her house. My favorite line was, well, first she refers to Samantha as your little bride. Mm-hmm. But then she looks at Samantha and says, you're the type who always dresses so sensibly. And all I could think about was when drag queens are being like shading each other backstage, one of the things that you'll hear somewhat frequently is like, those shoes look so comfortable, which is basically like saying like that heel is not high enough. Your shoes look disgusting. They're orthopedic. What are you doing?
I love that. I wrote this was a very like Lisa Vanderpump treatment of a new girl on Housewives.
Oh my God, yes.
Like really
yes.
putting her through the ringer at the first group dinner.
Yes.
It's Denise Richards showing up to Beverly Hills in a sparkly pair of shorts and a tank top, and everyone for a sleepover, and everyone is like in full glam.
Yes, yes. Oh man,
I love this. This was amazing. It was so. This character, I didn't write down the actress name who played this Sheila, but you hated her, and you just loved hating her.
Of course. And I don't know if she's in the rest of the series at all, but she was fun for this first episode for sure.
She was great. She was hilarious.
Because at dinner she says things like, everybody, we have to just make Samantha fit in. And of course, Samantha, the first thing we'll do is get you a good dressmaker. And I have the name of a hairdresser who works with hard to manage hair. And it's just like, wow.
Vicious.
Damn,
Vicious.
girl.
Not hiding it at all.
No. But I did like the moment where the person to Samantha's left says like, do you fly? And she goes, oh yes. And it's implied like on a broom.
Yes. I loved it.
Ooh, here's a fun piece of trivia. So Sheila asks her like, oh, Samantha, do you know Dr. Hafter, the plastic surgeon? He does beautiful nose work, which I think is either implying like you've had plastic surgery or you need plastic surgery. One or the other, honestly. It's meant to be an insult either way.
Right.
But apparently Elizabeth Montgomery had a nose job just like after this episode. So I guess if you look between this episode and like one or two later, her nose does look different.
Oh my God, I love that. And I mean, it's also just like a nod to the fact that she does wiggle her nose a lot when she does her magic.
Yes, of course.
I'm reading right now. The actress's name is Nancy Kovac, and she does appear in 5 episodes of Bewitched. I don't know how spaced apart, but good to know because she was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the nose comment is what finally puts Samantha over the edge because she's like debating using her powers or not, and that's it. And so she basically does a few insulting or things to kind of like take Sheila down a peg or two. Like somebody makes a comment about how Sheila never has a hair out of place, so Samantha keeps making like pieces of her hair go flying into her face.
Oh, it's so great.
Like dropping out of her big helmet of hair.
Yes.
And makes spinach appear in her teeth.
Mm-hmm. She makes the soup bowl move, so when she puts her elbow on the table, she shoves her elbow in the soup, which,
yes,
by the way, it'll also be her sneezing into her soup, having it like spray everywhere. But the soup is like gray sludge. It's the gray stuff from Beauty and the Beast.
I was thinking the same thing, and then as I was thinking that, I was like, I wonder if they just, when they colorized this episode, they didn't know what color to make the soup or something.
Oh, true, because it was literally like the
literally gray,
vile-looking thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it might have been.
But then she gets up from this. I was cracking up at this whole sequence. I was laughing already. Maybe I was a little bit, I had done some gardening. So I was watching, I was cracking up. And then when she gets up after she sneezes at the table and sprays the soup, and then her dress is like fully coming apart in the back, just like Dorit at the end, not Dorit, Camille at the end of that Housewives reunion, walking away with her dress coming apart.
Yes.
I was cracking up again. And then she like walks away and she's like trying to get away and Darren runs after her, which by the way, they seated Darren next to her and Samantha at the other end of the table.
Oh yeah, I know.
I was
so
like,
nasty.
This is so preposterous. But then he gets up to like help her and Samantha, I think she wiggles her nose or whatever. And the doors fly open as they're like in front of this like big, sweeping staircase.
Yeah.
When the wind blew in and she was like literally like screaming and being blown up the steps like Jumanji style, I was dying.
Yes. Because part of her hair falls off because she's wearing part of her helmet hair is a big wig clip-on thing.
Right.
So
I'm laughing right now just thinking about it. Oh my gosh. And then they cut back. I think the doors close and like everyone at the table is like kind of like fussing with each other and talking. Darren looks back at the table at Samantha and she's just got this little smirk on her face. And she says something like, "This is really good. I got to ask Sheila for the recipe."
Yeah. Did anyone else try the chicken? I thought the chicken was delicious.
Yes. The little mischievous look on her face.
Yes.
She's just perfect.
I know. So then I think we get the kind of concluding scene where they get home and Darren is suspicious that she used her magic. And Sam has that great line of, for a while there, it was hard to tell which witch was which.
Oh, maybe that's where I got it from.
Yeah. And he, of course, wants to bone again. And she's like, I've just got to get this kitchen cleaned up. And he's like, all right, well, don't take too long. And apparently she's horny as well because she doesn't feel like doing it by hand. So she does it all by magic and says, maybe I can tape her off.
Yeah, maybe not.
Oh, man. Okay. So I have some Bewitched trivia that I thought would be fun.
Okay.
So did you know that Sam was originally supposed to be named Cassandra?
I did read that, and it was like a different actress or something that they had in mind.
Yeah, there was a moment where, so before Elizabeth Montgomery became attached to the project, Dick Sargent was actually supposed to play Darren, and that was when somebody else was going to be playing Samantha, aka Cassandra, but then like something about that fell through, and then when it became attached to Elizabeth Montgomery, that's when Dick York became associated with the project. But it's just kind of funny that for a minute Dick Sargent was like supposed to play Darren.
Yeah, I did read that too. I read a few conflicting things about him being the original Darren, but no conflicting thing disputes that he was like in the running for it at the very least.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. I read a lot about Dick York's like condition on the set.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
I did know this because I think I saw some sort of like biography about Bewitched or something that they probably played on Nick at Night or Lifetime or some bullshit. But I didn't know how bad it got. I knew he had an injury from a previous movie that he was on with his back, and that it like affected him throughout the like entirety of the show, and that's ultimately the injury that led to him not being able to continue on the role of Darren.
Yeah.
That I knew, but I didn't know that like in between takes, like from the very beginning, he had something built for him that he like leaned up against to like ease his back pain between scenes.
Yeah, and he like developed a pretty severe painkiller addiction at some point.
Yes,
really sad.
It like ruined his career. He's talked about it extensively until his death. About like really sad, you know, like that injury, that back injury, just totally changed the trajectory of his career. And you know, it's just crazy to think. And I think that's what led to a lot of the challenges on set, was that he was challenged to work with. Sometimes he often drank in the mornings before he went to set, which I don't think was super uncommon back then. And that like after a little bit, there had to be some conversations about just his behavior in order for everyone to just be amicable. But I did read that Agnes Moorehead was very close with him, remained close with him for the entirety of his life, and that when they switched Darren's, that she was noted as saying in like the writing room, or the first time they were all on set together working, I don't like change.
Yeah, I know, which is like, welcome to the new guy, I guess.
Right.
It's not like it's his fault.
Right. And Dick Sargent, I read a lot about him too, that he ended up coming out many years after the show, I think in the 90s.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, you know, was an advocate, was, you know, worked a lot with AIDS funding and fundraising, and he like was very close with Elizabeth Montgomery until their deaths.
Yeah, I think they died within a year of each other.
My heart. I didn't, and it says that they were like very close on set, and that she would say, and many other people would say, he brought like a warmer relationship between the two of them than the previous Darren. And I just think that's really sweet that they remained close forever, and that they just supported one another. That's the kind of thing you always want to hear about these shows.
Yeah.
Instead of like, everyone hated each other.
Totally.
My heart.
Growing up watching these on Nick at Night, like I loved Bewitched, I loved I Dream of Jeannie, I loved I Love Lucy. Those were probably like my top 3 Nick at Night shows. And I just remember when I was a little kid going like, oh, I like really want to meet Lucille Ball. I really want to meet Elizabeth Montgomery, but they like had passed by that point. So it's just like, it's just kind of ironic to me that like the shows that I remember so much specifically from my childhood are these ones that were like from 20 years prior.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Me too. I like grew up watching these shows, and I remember when Elizabeth Montgomery died. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember it was while I was watching these shows on Nick at Night, because in between, like, episodes, they did like a little marathon of Bewitched episodes, which I didn't know why at the time. But in between like commercials, they'd have like a little card with her like birth and death year on it.
Oh.
And I remember seeing that as a kid in between, and like my mouth dropping open. I was telling Davey this, and I was so sad. I was so sad and upset that she had passed away. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't talk to anybody about this because nobody even watches this show. I am a child.
Yeah.
But I was so sad.
Well, they brought us many years of joy and laughter, these shows.
They really did. And I liked the later seasons, too, with Dick Sargent as well. And, you know, the little additions.
Yeah.
Tabitha and Esmeralda and Uncle Abner was his name, I think?
I think so, yeah. And Dr. Bombay.
Dr. Bombay, who I read... Okay, here's another piece of trivia that I have to say. There was a soap opera called Passions.
Okay.
Are you familiar?
Well, I know the name. I've never seen a soap opera.
Yeah, me neither. LOL. When my dad married my stepmom, they introduced me to soap operas because I didn't either until then. They just never were in my world. But then they watched Days of Our Lives. And so I became obsessed with Days of Our Lives in grammar school.
Okay.
And after Days of Our Lives, eventually a show called Passions started in like the late 90s, I want to say.
Okay.
And it was a soap opera, but it had a magical element. And the witch, yes, the witch on the show, her name was Tabitha, which was like a nod to Tabitha, the daughter who Samantha and Darren will eventually have on Bewitched. Okay. And Tabitha on that show has a daughter or a granddaughter named Endora.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Right, as like a nod to the show. So there's just so many things you see out there that are nods to Bewitched, which I just think is so cool. It lives on.
That's amazing. Oh, Bewitched. I was just, when you started talking about soap operas, it reminded me that there was some point where I was like, I wonder how long it would take, like, because they release daily, at least during the week, most of them. Mm-hmm. And like if you watched one episode of General Hospital a day, it would take you 41 years to catch up on all the episodes of General Hospital.
Oh my god. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
I tried to find ratings for this.
Okay.
And on Rotten Tomatoes, they have a rating for season 1. But we can just count that as like for the whole series, I think. Because I think that's probably where all the ratings went. And we have... Are you ready?
Yes.
The tomato meter is 83%. And the audience popcorn meter is 76%.
Okay.
And on IMDb, for the episode itself that we watched, it was 8.4. And as a series overall, Bewitched has a 7.6.
Okay. All right.
You know? And I think that's pretty good for a show that was on for 8 seasons.
Yeah. And
had some notably panned seasons in the end to still end up with a 7.6 at the end.
I think I'm going to give at least the pilot episode a solid 8. Like, it was cute, it was fun, it was fast, it set up a good premise.
Yeah, I want to be bold, but I don't know how high I want to go. I'm going to go, just to still leave room in the world, and because I do agree with you, I'm going to go like 8.9.
Oh, wow, okay.
This was great.
Yeah, it was. So I think it's officially...
So much.
A beauty for both of us?
Oh, beyond. Absolute beauty. No questions asked.
Well, next week we're going to be doing the Bewitched movie with Nicole Kidman, so it'll be interesting to see how we feel about that.
Yes, I think I saw this, but I can't remember, so I guess we'll see pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I never did, so I'm excited about it. But...
Me too.
Well, listeners, posting comments on the internet can sometimes feel like screaming into the void. But writing a review for our podcast is actually really helpful because it makes it more likely that other people will find our podcast. So go try it now.
That's right. And another way for people to find out about our podcast is through word of mouth. So tell a friend, post about us on Reddit or wherever you post on the internet, and help others find a way to find us.
Yes, our social media is RebootyPod on Instagram. You can email us at rebootypod@gmail.com. We love getting emails, so send us a note and say hi and let us know if you have some suggestions.
And we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/NandMatt. You get a lot of cool bonus episodes. We have a backlog of a lot of games we've played and things like that. And we've done tons of movie reviews. In fact, some of them have corresponded with our episodes here, so you should check it out.
Yeah, and thanks so much for listening to Rebooty and the Beast.
See you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.